Good morning once again. There you go. Great evening last night. $42,000, is that what I heard? Good Lord. You guys are fantastic, I tell you what. I got a piece of paper up here that the chief touched. Does anybody want it? Want to start bidding on it? Somebody will give me $100 for it. I know they will. Anyways, as we promised, I'm going to try and get this out of here because I'm going to need it. There we go. As we promised, we were bringing back a very special group of individuals to continue to celebrate the 40 years of excellence, 40 years of your efforts started by them. On Saturday, June 6, 1981, hope would shine bright as 5 members of the Wichita Police Department and the executive director of Special Olympics Kansas at the time would step into history. Officers Robert Bachman, Walt Kuykendall, Janice McCloud, Jack Leon, Don Barney Epson, and the executive director, Kirk Miles, knew only that their efforts that morning were humble, but had no idea they were about to set in motion a movement that would change the world. Now, 41 years later, we are able to celebrate and hear directly from them their story as the journey begins. Sadly, Don Epson is no longer with us, but he is no less important to the story. Here to tell his story as well as their own, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, accompanied by Chief LaMunyon himself and Christopher Leon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the original 6. Fantastic. Okay, the first complicated thing's taken care of. We got you out here. All good. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get right into it because we only have about 25 minutes to hear one of the most incredible stories we'll ever hear in our lives. And I'm going to start with Kirk Miles, again, who was the original CEO of Special Olympics Kansas at the time. You know, we understand there was a conversation and we get the Chiefs' role in it, but let's hear the details about it because, Kurt, you were instrumental in making this happen.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. I take that back. Great morning. Look across the room here. Think back to 1981. When the first, well, actually, let's go back to 1968, when the greatest advocate in the world for people with intellectual disabilities started Special Olympics at Soldier Field, Chicago, with representatives from, I think, 23 states in Canada. To what it is now. Then in 81, Wichita, Kansas, the torch run, and starting and looking around here that, you know, there's over 1,000 advocates, just like Eunice Kennedy Shriver, for people with intellectual disabilities, and it's a great morning. Actually, it was the year before 1981 that with Kansas Special Olympics, the summer games, we had just 1 games per year. Now that's changed a lot more activities throughout Special Olympics calendar, but we had the summer games and we would move them around from Manhattan, Kansas to Topeka to Lawrence, Wichita, and got to the point to where it was like, why are we doing this? Well, we knew why we were doing it. We were wanting to introduce new populations, new communities to the idea of Special Olympics. Once we got to Wichita, we saw some magic happen. We saw sparks fly. And that's when we saw in 80 that the law enforcement officers that were coming out to provide security and volunteer, be part of the opening ceremonies, whenever there was an interaction between a Special Olympics athlete and a cop, there was something magical. I mean, when you walk in and see a governor walk up to an athlete on the award stand to give them the medal, and the athlete points to the lady cop with their badge over there and says, "No, I want my medal from her." You know you've got something. And that we saw that happen time and again. So in '81, Chief and I had a conversation. I called the chief and said, hey, we know that there's something special here between law enforcement, cops, and Special Olympics, and he agreed 100%. I said, what if we, got a run, because we need some PR. Not many people in Wichita know about the Special Olympics. What if we got a run together and ran from City Hall or the police department or somewhere to the site of the games for our opening ceremonies that you guys already participate in? He said, that's a great idea, but you need to talk to Captain Ibsen, Barney Ibsen, who's not with us. But Barney was leading the runners. He was the guy that put the running club together. So Barney went to the chief. Chief said, yeah, let's do it. So there was a torch run from City Hall to Wichita High School South to open the ceremonies. After that, Chief and I had many more conversations, ideas, dreams about what it could become throughout the state and around the country and ultimately the world. We had some ideas. When we talked, it was like we need to get two entities involved, Special Olympics and IACP. And Chief says, can you get a meeting with Eunice? And I said, possibly. And he said, well, I can take care of IACP. So over the next few years, we went around to, IACP meetings. It was Chief LaMunyon, Barney Ibsen, Tony Godinez, Bullens, Major Bullens, Doyle King. We were at every IACP meeting schmoozing every potential vice president we could with what was going on in Wichita, Kansas. Chief had already had, I think, Hang 'em High Joe Casey from Nashville come into Kansas. Things started developing. We had a meeting with Eunice Kennedy Shriver, and I think Chief agrees with me on this, that when we first met with Eunice, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, again, the greatest advocate for people with intellectual disabilities ever, and she was a little hesitant about getting involved in something that might take away from the athletes. She ingrained in all of us in Special Olympics from the very beginning, there's one simple question to ask, and that is, whatever you're trying to make a decision, ask yourself this question: is it good for the athletes and their families? And it came back, she ingrained that in me, and that's what I used on her a couple of years later when we were discussing the law enforcement torch run. I threw that at her and I said, Ms. Shriver, you said, is it, when we make decisions, is it good for the athletes? I said, you need to come to Kansas and see this. Chief, we planned a lot of things, and Ms. Shriver came to Kansas for our opening ceremonies. The helicopters, the cops, the lights, the sirens, the sparks that flew when the opening ceremonies were over, the sparks that flew at the award stands. Mrs. Shriver said, you're right. This is the right thing for us to do. So that is really how this wonderful thing got sparked. And, the marriage is incredible. We knew that we had something special, and the idea is one thing, but the execution is what really had to happen. And Chief LaMunyon took the bull by the horns and allowed his officers to get involved in ways, leave work, go to the different IACP meetings. I could tag along, and it was a phenomenal experience, which we really didn't have any idea it would get this big.
Kurt, go ahead. That's a heck of a story. Those are the details that many of us don't know. So yeah, thank you, Kurt. Where did you have the idea of the run? Where did the torch come into play, that you carried the torch?
Well, back when Eunice started Special Olympics, of course, there was some discussion about being part of the Olympic movement, which she didn't want to do. But she wanted the games to be like the Olympics, the name Special Olympics. She got special permission from de Coubertin, who was then the head of the Olympic Committee, to use the term Special Olympics. So we would have opening ceremonies, and of course, in the Olympics, opening ceremonies, you had the lighting of the cauldron. So we decided that we wanted to do that, and that's what we did from Wichita City Hall to Wichita High School South for our Special Olympics games, and felt that that was a good way to get law enforcement even more involved.
All right. Now, I understand Barney, the tip of the spear, kind of gets, he's ahead of the run club at the PD. And then somehow the five of you, I mean, did Barney strong arm you? How did the four of you get involved?
Well, actually, Barney and us were all running together. We did it had runs on weekends and stuff. We were a team. We competed in other law enforcement runs throughout. And the chief came up with this idea to run the torch down to South High. And we definitely volunteered for that. And it was just a wonderful thing. Back then, you know, you had the Olympics going on, running the torch across the country. You had the Special Olympics had the torch lighting the flame, and it was just a good marriage of ideas that came together for us to participate in that.
Okay. Any others? Bob?
I got in torch running because of Captain Barney Ibsen, and Barney called me up one night on a Thursday night, I think, about 5 o'clock, and said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" I was a captain. I'm a brand new officer. I've been on just over a year. And I said, "I got nothing going on, Captain. What do you want?" And he said, "Come on downtown with City Hall tomorrow. We're going to run a torch for the Special Olympics." And I said, "We're going to do what?" He said, "We're going to run a torch like they do in the Olympics." And so captain calls you up and says, "Be downtown." I was downtown at 5 o'clock the next night. And this torch we had was very primitive. It wouldn't even stay lit. We had to light it when we got to the stadium because you could have run with it in Kansas when it blew it out. So we lined up, the six of us, and they put a patrol car behind us and to protect us. We ran the 4.5 miles down the South High. And you got to realize that at that time, our department really embraced the torch run because of the chief. And that whole week of the torch run was a special week. And so we get to South High, and we go in there, and we follow the parade of athletes. And the chief organized a parade of officers that followed the athletes. And so we had 50 to 100 officers in uniform that would march in formation behind the athletes. And then they brought the torch in and lit it, and it was real cool. And the chief came flying in this little helicopter that you never get me, and it was a little two-seater, gasoline-powered. And ain't no way in hell I'd have flown in that thing. But so the chief deserves a lot of medals of valor because he flew in that thing a bunch. But when he came in there, that stadium, and that thing landed in the middle of the football field, and he got out in full uniform, the crowd went crazy. And so we thought the torch run was a good idea, and the chief took it and ran with it. And next year we raised some money, and the third year it kind of blew up, and it went from there. I never dreamed it would get this big, and I think it's because of all the participants like you guys that keep it going, because we just started it, and you guys get all the credit.
I have to point this out. Bob is still an active duty police officer with the Wichita Police Department. 40. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I forgot to point out, too, talking about Walt here. We've run the torch 41 years. He's the only person on the planet that's run the torch run every year of that 41 years. He's the only one that can say that. So I wanted to give him a shout out.
And he's going to be running with you today. That's for sure. So I want to jump over to Jack for a moment because we got so many questions and so much information we want to get out in just a little bit amount of time. But now you were all familiar with Special Olympics, certainly because of the involvement of the police department. But Jack, you have a very interesting story because here you are as one of the original runners, and then subsequently years later, you're blessed with Christopher. How does that make you feel coming from that angle of things?
I can only repeat what Chief Chacon said yesterday, that to keep doing what you're doing because you have no idea the good that you're creating, not only for the kids and the emotions that they get to feel, of exuberance, of exhilaration, of excitement, and you've seen it, but it's not just that. And the good feelings that you have of being part of that, it's not just that. It's the lifestyle, it's the environment, it's the culture that we create, giving these kids the opportunity to do that. And as a family member, that's what you want for your children. You want them to be happy. You want them to do the things that every other child gets to do. And you want them to feel the things that every other child gets to do. Then they stop being a child and they grow up. How old are you?
Yeah, Daddy.
And he's 31 now. And the idea is I'm still his daddy, and that's my job, being his daddy now. One more thing I have to say. I remember Barney and I talking about this, and he used to, when he would get drunk, he'd start talking about Richard Walter Ibsen, you know, and so we called him Barney. And Barney, you know, he said, you know, about torches, we need torches. I said, where do you get torches? I said, I'll get it from Kirk. And he knew all about that. He had all these plans in his head on how to do that. You know, and so Barney was really a lot of the spirit behind why we were doing this, and beer had a lot to do with it. Yeah, you know, and
You're right, it hasn't changed.
yeah, it hasn't changed, right? Was that a Kansas officer?
I think it was a Kansas officer.
But you know, one of the things that happened that made it work even better, that greased the rails, was that we happened to have a chief that said, okay. He let us do all those things where we got to take time off work to go prep some of the routes. He let us wear hats during the week of Special Olympics, and you'll see in those old pictures all these cops in uniform, but they're wearing these little Freddie Fudd Special Olympic hats on, you know. And so we got to do all that kind of stuff for the entire week. And then there were the parades, and then even more activities. And so Chief, you know, Barney was the spirit, you know, that got us going. He was our buddy, but the chief greased the rails and really got this thing going, organized. One more thing. Special Olympics is working not just because we're organized or we have spirit. Special Olympics is working because this is just a marriage made in heaven. And I hear about, you know, ways of putting this. We need each other. It's not, you know, inspiration that, but we need each other as far as law enforcement needing something to focus on. That we help people, and these are some of the people that we help. We help everybody. Those who need us the most, you know, is who we're serving. And that's what this is about. That's why it's working.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need the athletes as much as they need us, so it's a great marriage. I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to pose the real big question for Walt and Jan to get us going. We have received numerous questions from the audience over the last couple of days. Well, I should say I've received a lot of questions, but it's all the same question. The five of you sit here today, 41 years later. You did a run because Barney, Captain Epson told you to or whatever. You knew it was the right thing to do. You knew you were involved, but it was a run. And today, you are responsible for over 100,000 law enforcement and military volunteers for the law enforcement torch run, 4 $42 million just this past year, but we're on the verge of raising $1 billion since its inception. How do you feel? How do you feel sitting up here today knowing that you changed the world? Walt?
It's kind of hard to look back and see all that. You know, it's 41 years, you're trying to put it all together. And just amazing to see the actual love that's expressed by the Special Olympic athletes and their families, and the law enforcement community, how we all bridged together. On some of the original runs that we took off, and nobody knew about the torch run and Special Olympics, we had to go out and sell the program to these different entities, the police departments and sheriff's departments throughout Kansas. And it was tough because some of these departments, some of these chiefs didn't like the sheriff's department and vice versa. So we were able to bridge that gap and introduce them to Special Olympics. And it's definitely come a long ways, and I'm definitely proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Walt. Jan?
Well, I remember just being approached about doing a run, and back then we were all running here, there, and yonder for different things. And they explained that this is a run for Special Olympics, and I really wasn't that familiar with it, but I soon got familiar with it. And so for me, it turned into something like going for a run for Wichita Police Department to running for a whole group of people, showing our support for them. I would never, ever have imagined that I would be sitting here 41 years later talking about that specific run. It changed my whole concept of a purpose. And I will say for me, yeah, I went on the first run. Okay, that was, you know, the more I look back on it now, the more special that has become. But it's not just about, you know, I look at it personally for me, it's about for all of you folks, what you have done. You have just, you know, started working, you have carried this on, and it is just, I'm so pleased and so happy and so proud of each and every one of you guys for your dedication and your support of this. It's just amazing what this whole one run has done, personally for me, and getting something else started that is such a benefit for so many people. And again, I'm pleased with each one of you. I'm proud of each one of you, and I would just love to see this carried on and on and on.
Thank you, Jan. You mentioned one thing that I think is very important, and we've kind of sent this message throughout the years with the torch run. One run. You started with one run. It only takes one of something. It takes one idea. It takes one phone call. It takes one more to create a change agent of the world, and I think that's very important. Jack, as we start to wrap up here, you're sitting here, you're responsible for all this. How does it make you feel?
I'm responsible for him. No, I just feel like not so much responsible, but grateful, proud, all those other feelings. Oh, Bob, the reason we called you is because you're one of the few cops we knew that could run 6 miles. Yeah. But, yeah, we were thinking, you know, who could run 6 miles all the way down to South High? But the main thing is, though, is I feel proud of what's come of it. You know, my gears have changed because of Chris. that, I got responsibilities that, that he needs me to be the dad in the stands cheering for him. He needs me to be the dad that drives him back and forth. To where? Where am I going to drive him? And I'm going to drive him to activities that are made for him so he can experience those things that every other kid gets to do. And he and his mom especially, because she adds the mom side of this to it. Where's Patty? Yeah. Pat, stand up. She's going to kill me for that.
Yeah.
But it takes a team. We tag team Chris for the last 31 years, and we're still doing it. And and that's been our responsibility. And I that's where I see I need to be, and that's what I've been doing for the last bunch of years. But yeah, it's just changed my life.
Bob, you're sitting here in front of almost 1,000 cops. You all have changed every one of our lives, not just that of the athletes. How does that make you feel?
Well, humbled, like I say, we just did a run, thinking it would help out. We didn't realize it would go as far as it did. It wasn't until, I think, the 20th anniversary that I realized that it had gotten as large as it had. And, I take credit for being there for the run, and I'm lucky that I was asked to do it. And we participated in it over the years. But seriously, it's the people in this room with your skills and organization and your ability to sell people on ideas that you get the credit. I'm just an original runner. I'm just a B cop. But you guys really do get all the credit, and I thank you for all the work you do.
We could spend all day talking, but unfortunately our time is growing short. Kirk, we started with you, a phone call, five runners, and away we go.
Yeah, a couple things. I'll try to keep it short here. One, there's been, first was a transformative moment in the lives of people with intellectual disability, and that was Eunice Kennedy Shriver in Chicago in 1968. And then for the movement, Special Olympics movement, which you guys and gals are all part of, there was another transformative moment, and that was 1981 when law enforcement and Special Olympics came together. And my wife kind of summed it up in 2 words. My wife, Kathy, another one's going to kill me. When we got on the plane in Kansas City, the storm system had moved in, and we were a little bit late, as Mike knows, and they did everything they could. We got picked up at the airport. Kathy had been to, I think, maybe one conference our first one, at the Doubletree Hotel in Overland Park, Kansas, where we had maybe 23 people at the conference. When we got here, they hustled us out, took our luggage, hid it somewhere, brought us in a back door. And when the door opened and she looked in with me, we walked in, she went, "Oh shit." Those are the 2 words that sum it up for me.
Well, yeah. We have almost 400, you've heard this several times this week, we have almost 400 first-timers here at this conference, people who've never been to a conference before. And I bet you a lot of you said the same thing when you walked through those doors. Oh, shit. Harry, could you do me a favor? Could we raise the house lights? Because we've heard about a couple of the spouses, but we all know that they are just as important as we are, as you are. We got a support mechanism. Can we have the spouses stand up, please, that are able to join us today? Give them a round of applause. They are amazing people. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Chief, we're going to close it with you. How does it make you feel now? And with how proud of you are you of these original 6?
Well, thank you. As I've told you over the years, those of you that have been around and those that have heard the message, I never had the original idea for the torch run. It came from Kurt, it came from Barney, it came from them. They're the ones that went out and did it. They are the ones that literally changed the world in terms of law enforcement and Special Olympics. Walt hit on some bumps that they ran into. You know, the sheriff's department's not talking to the police department, or this group's not talking to this group. It has unified law enforcement around the world. We are all one. We all come together for one common cause, and that's for our special athletes. Because what we are now, what they didn't know at the time is what we all know now. When you go around the world and watch a torch run, we are the guardian of the flames. And ladies and gentlemen, these are the original guardians of the flame.
Thank you, Chief. I think that just sums it up perfectly. We hope that this conversation has enlightened you about some of the details of the movement, about the history, and stories. I haven't even heard some of these stories, and many of us have been around for a while. So we hope you've gotten something out of that. Never forget where we have been, because it will always guide us to where we need to go. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for the original six.